morning, everyone. Thank you guys for coming.
Morning.
Today's topic, I did my research paper on the Israelites, saying that they're not from Africa and the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm going to prove what I said, because as Paul always said, challenge what people say. You know, I love this class. I'm glad I took this class. So we're going to start off with Luke chapter 21, verse 20. It's going to explain what happened to the Israelites during the time of Rome. Okay, now read.
Luke chapter 21, verse 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies.
Okay, this is Jesus the Christ speaking here. He's telling the Israelites, he's saying, when you see Rome compassed with armies, that's the Roman Empire was ruling during the time of Christ. Because they was going to kill us. Go ahead.
Then know that the desolation thereof is not.
Desolation means the destruction was coming. Go ahead.
Verse 21. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains.
Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, he's telling the Israelites to run, because the word flee means run. Let's see where the Israelites ran to, because Christ had a similar situation when he was going to get put to death. Go to Matthew 2:13. I'm going to show you where Christ fled to, where he ran to. All right? Matthew chapter 2 and verse 13. Okay? Go ahead. Matthew 2, verse 13.
Matthew chapter 2, verse 13.
Right.
And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying,
Joseph is the father of Christ. Go ahead.
Arise, and take the young child and
his mother's Mary and Jesus. Go ahead.
and flee into Egypt.
Flee where?
Into Egypt.
Where is Egypt? Egypt is in Africa. So Christ ran to Africa. Because if Christ was white, why would he run to Africa? I mean, why would he run there? Because he'll blend in with the people because he's dark skinned. So he's saying flee to Africa. Now go back to Luke 21. Because he's going to explain when he told the Israelites to run to the mountains, then he told them to run to Africa. Read.
And let them which are in the midst of it depart out.
Go ahead.
And let not them that are in the countries enter therein too.
So he's saying, if you're there, run. Do not stay in Jerusalem, because the Roman Empire, the modern day Caucasians today, was going to kill you. Go ahead.
Verse 22, For these be the days of vengeance,
Go ahead.
that all things which are written may be fulfilled.
Go ahead.
Verse 23, But woe unto they that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days.
Because you read history, it's called the Siege of Jerusalem. You learned about it in Global 9 and in Global 10. They cut off the water systems, and we will be forced to eat our children. So he says, woe unto them that were child, because we was going to eat our kids. Go ahead.
For there shall be a great distress in the land,
It's going to be a great distress in the land. Go ahead.
and wrath upon this people.
Keep reading.
Verse 24,
Watch this.
And they shall fall by the edge of the sword.
So the black man and black woman fell by the edge of the sword. Go
and
ahead.
shall be led away captive into all nations.
Led away captives into all nations. Go ahead.
And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles.
Meaning the people that was in Jerusalem today will be living here, like the so-called Palestinians and the Jewish people will be living in Jerusalem, because the real Israelites ran away. So he's saying that these people are going to be living here now. Now, this is a book called From Babylon to Timbuktu, written by Rudolph R. Windsor. He was a black scholar. Okay, and he's going to expound upon what I just read. So read this part right here. Right.
In the years 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey
Remember, 65 BC, go ahead.
Pompey captured Jerusalem.
Captured Jerusalem. Christ just spoke about that. Go ahead.
In 70 AD,
In 70 AD,
General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish
so he
state
put an end to the Jewish state. Go ahead.
with great slaughter.
With great slaughter, so he killed millions of our people. Go ahead.
During the period of the military governors of Palestine.
Palestine, you know who the Palestinians are today? Like Bin Laden and that nation. Okay, go ahead.
Many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people.
Right?
During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated,
watch this,
that over 1 million Jews
1 million Jews, go ahead,
fled into Africa.
1 million Jews fled into Africa. This is the book called Babylon and Timbuktu. He's saying 1 million Jews fled to Africa. Go ahead.
Fleeing from the Roman
So
persecution.
Christ spoke about it. He said, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, run. Go ahead.
And slavery. The slave
The
markets
slave markets, we learned about this in class. Go ahead.
were full of black Jewish slaves.
They were full of black Jewish slaves. Now, when we ran into Africa, we learned in the beginning of the class that Africans had civilizations, right? When we watched Roots, you had Africans that were capturing Africans and selling them to the so-called white man. Now, I'm going to show you in Joel chapter 3 that that's biblical. Joel chapter 3. So remember, Christ told the Israelites to run around 70 AD. When he died, 70 AD, the prophecy came to pass and they ran to Africa. All right? And we've been dwelling there for almost over 1,000 years.
Verse.
Joel chapter 3 and verse 1. That.
Joel chapter 3 verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
For behold, in those days and in that time,
Right.
when I shall bring again the captivity.
Captivity, does anyone know what captivity means?
Like a slave.
Slave, right. So it says, I'll bring again captivity that
Of Judah.
Judah, you do the breakdown of Judah today, the so-called American blacks are Judah. Go ahead.
And Jerusalem.
Meaning the West Indians and the Haitians, because when you read about the slave trade, it was those three that were scattered mostly around this side of the earth. Go ahead.
I will also gather all nations
Mhm.
and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat.
So this is a future prophecy. I will gather all nations. This is prophetically speaking about World War III. Go ahead.
and will plead with them there for my people.
Why? Because everyone that all nations are doing it, all nations put black people in slavery. Go ahead.
And for my heritage,
Mhm.
Israel,
Verse 3.
whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land.
So, because blacks were scattered everywhere during slavery. Go ahead.
And
Verse
they have cast lots for my
3.
people.
What does cast lots mean? Remember in Roots, and he was like 45, 45, 46, 47, 46. That's what it means to cast lots. Go ahead.
And have given a boy for an harlot.
Meaning they made boys into sex breeders, because slavery was a big business. The more children you had, the more money you can produce. Right? So they'll make men have sex with other black women. Go ahead.
And sold a girl for wine.
They sold a girl for wine. That's in the history book. They sold the black woman for wine. Go ahead.
That they might drink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon?
Now, the breakdown of Tyre and Zidon are African nations today. Those would be the modern day Africans. Go ahead.
and all the coasts of
See,
Palestine.
so he's naming the nations who did it. Africans and the Palestinians, so-called Arabs today. Go ahead.
Will ye render me a recompense?
Meaning payback. Go ahead.
And if you recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head.
Because they're saying, look, the Africans and Arabs are basically saying this. Since you didn't choose us, we're going to put your people in slavery. Go ahead.
Because ye
Now,
have,
it's going to explain who they sold us to. Go ahead.
because ye have taken my silver and my gold,
Mhm.
and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things.
Watch this.
The children also of Judah
So they sold the children of Judah, the American blacks, go ahead,
and the children of
West
Jerusalem
Indians and Haitians.
have ye sold
Sold who? Go ahead.
unto the
Who are
Grecians.
the Grecians? Who are the Grecians today? You
White
want to
men.
know? The Greeks. He said they sold them to the Greeks because that was the name of the Caucasian race then, the Greeks. So he says you sold them to the Greeks. Now we learned about that in Roots. Why? Because when Kunta was, he was in Africa, he went to go build the drug for his son, for his little brother. They captured him and sold him to who? The so-called white man. Go ahead.
That ye might remove them far from their border.
How will we remove far from our border?
Slave
The slave ship. I tell you this is biblical right now. Deuteronomy 28 verse 68 is going to explain the slave trade perfectly. Deuteronomy 28 verse 68. Watch this. Deuteronomy 28th chapter, the 68th verse. This is Moses speaking to the Israelites. He's telling them if you don't keep the commandments, all these curses are going to happen to you. This is what the last curse he gave upon the Israelites if they don't keep the commandments. Read.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68.
Mhm.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt.
Egypt. Now, you read about this in Egypt. Moses just took the people out of Egypt already. So he's saying you're going to go to Egypt again. Because when you read this Bible, they never went back to Egypt as slaves. And the Greek word for Egypt is bondage, slavery. Go ahead.
Again with ships.
With what?
With ships.
This is Bible prophecy. He's saying the Israelites are going to slavery again with ships. That we watched that in class. They was stacked up on cargo slave ships. That's in the Bible. Because they think the Bible is a religious book. It's not. It's a history book and laws. That's all it's about. Go ahead.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt see it no more
Well, we're
again.
not going to see it again. Our homeland. Go ahead.
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
We were sold unto your enemies. Remember that. We were sold. Go ahead.
For bondmen
Bond, the word bond is slave. So bondmen. Go
and
ahead.
bondwomen.
Slave woman.
And no man shall buy you.
Meaning no man shall redeem you. Because, and we've been in this class, many men have stood up and tried to save the black man and black woman. Like Martin Luther King, he tried. Malcolm X, he tried. Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. They all stood up and tried to save us, but they couldn't. Because if they did save us, we would not be in the state we are in today. All right? Yeah. That's it?
That's it.
All right, now we're going to go to Galatians chapter 4 and verse 26. Now, because they say that the original man came from Africa. Now, you can read about, they say it will come from Africa according to science, but if you read the Bible, this is where the original man and everything started. Okay? Galatians 4 and 26.
Galatians chapter 4, verse 26.
Where's the motherland? Africa, right? Go ahead.
But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us
So
all.
that's the motherland. But, you know, in science and in Africanism, they teach that Africa was the motherland. Why? Because we were in slavery in Africa. Because they brought us from the west coast of Africa as slaves. So we just read that Christ fled to Africa. I mean, Christ, his people ran to Africa. And that's how we went in Africa today. That's how they was able to get us. All right, so did I go too fast for anyone? All right. That's it. All right. So we proved that that they sold us in Africa and they brought us over here. And this is big. All right? That's it. Any questions? Or?
No, that was really good.
Sure? Yeah.
What are you wearing?
This is a priestly garment. All right? When you read Revelation chapter 1, Christ had a garment down to his foot like this.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just want to know the point.
Oh, okay. Anybody else?
No, you're a really good reader.
I have a question,
Okay.
but I don't know if we can really kind of get into it right now. So, because I know there's other people that have to do it. And I'm not, now you kind of are bringing out my lack of sophistication. But let me get this straight. When you're talking about from Africa, they were brought into Africa because we know that the real Israelites, they were taken out of Israel.
Right.
And we know that the people that are now in that Israel
Right.
are not the true Israelites. We know that. Okay? But what I'm saying is, now how do we get from Egypt all the way to the West Coast? Because that's what, even when I was reading, I was having a hard time understanding how you were saying how you got all the way from Egypt. And you talk about Egypt, but Egypt, we all know Egypt is in Africa.
Right.
So how then are you saying that the people are Israelites and they're not African? Because if you're saying they're Egyptians, they are African.
No, I didn't.
And that's where I kind of got lost, even when I was trying to follow your line of thinking.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I went too fast. I'm sorry. Now,
Because
When
there was a disconnect there. And
Okay,
I had
you-
that same
go
difficulty
back to
when I was
Luke.
reading your paper.
when you read Luke, he's telling them to flee to the mountains. He's talking about Africa.
Right?
Okay. When you run to a place, for instance, I'm a Mexican. I run to America. I'm not an American. I'm still a Mexican. That's what the Israelites did. We had to run because we can blend in with dark people. That's
Okay.
what happened. We
Right.
fled into the north. Now, in this book, it explains where a lot of them ran to. All right, I'm show you pages.
Because I know that also in your paper you had mentioned about the Arabs. And we did talk about, and they did say that the Arabs were really heavy on the selling of slaves
Right.
to the Americans. So that I definitely, but I just had to disconnect. I really couldn't understand how you went from that they weren't Africans. And I know the whole thing about Kemet too.
Mhm.
But I was just a little confused about how you said they weren't Africans, but they came from Egypt. Because if they came from Egypt, they're Africans.
No, they didn't come from Egypt. They was in Israel and they fled to Egypt. That's
And they
what I'm saying.
fled to
They ran to Egypt. They ran to
Okay,
Egypt.
so then how do we get from Egypt,
Oh, okay.
which is all the way east,
I'm gonna
which
show you
is
where.
AKA the Middle East,
Right.
to the west,
Because remember, we
where the
fled.
West Coast, where we're now talking about where the slaves came from, which was on the West Coast.
Right. Because when we fled to Africa, we fled. Remember, we were scattered among all people because we was in slavery.
So you're saying eventually
Mhm.
they
We've been
went from
dwelling
the
there.
Middle East
Right. Because we
and
been dwelling
into,
there. Right.
okay.